I have played my fair share of puzzle games in my time, but the We Were Here series might be some of my favourites. It's hard to beat some co-op escape room type games where you can just sit down and get angry at each other when you eventually end up dying due to each other's mistakes. But most puzzle games don't really have a story. Instead, it's just going room by room. And while this series began that way, it really does have a story that holds it all together. So we will be starting with the very first game in the series, We Were Here. Now, I won't lie to you. There is not a lot of story in this particular game. In fact, it's probably the least amount in the entire series. But while there isn't much here, it's still a jumping off point for the premise of the franchise. So, let's get into it. We begin with a scene in the snow as footprints litter the ground in what seems to be a blizzard. We can see that there is a group of 4 people, but interestingly, the group split up into 2 separate groups of 2. An interesting point to mention as it will come up in the sequels. And one group sends out a flare which shows a big old castle in the distance. I'm not entirely sure why the flare revealed that, as the blizzard doesn't seem to be all that bad and it's pretty hard to miss. The 2 enter the castle, which I suppose acts as good shelter from the elements, but I would certainly have many questions as to why there is a big castle in the middle of nowhere. The 2 get ambushed by some person or entity, and they end up unconscious. Cue the title screen. Now, let me give a little rundown on what is happening here. Firstly, the explorers that we see at the beginning of the game are actually color-coded, and since we don't have any names for them, I will discern them by color. Think of it a bit like the Power Rangers. Makes it seem a little cooler. The 2 explorers that went off into the castle that we saw were the Red Explorer and the Dark Blue Explorer. The 2 of them were separated after being knocked out from the person when they entered the castle. The Red Explorer will take on the role of, explorer, as they awake in a very well kept castle dungeon, which I appreciate greatly since whoever did the knocking out takes great pride in their home. The Dark Blue Explorer, however, has awoken in the library area with a bunch of information around them, thus taking on the role of librarian. Both of the explorers have been given walkie-talkies that will be the only mode of communication between them, with the Dark Blue Explorer needing to feed information to the Red Explorer to help them overcome puzzles. It's almost like the cartoonish version of Saw, where the owner of the castle is equally interested in puzzles and games that he wants the explorers to play. Now, I want you to take a good old look at that walkie-talkie, alright? Sear that image into your mind. It won't be relevant right now, but in the future titles it will be. The first is an eye puzzle with a bunch of symbols. The Dark Blue Explorer has a sheet of paper that explains which symbols the Red Explorer needs to press to continue onwards. You get the idea. A variety of picture puzzles which test the communication skills of both explorers, and even life-saving color theory is needed. Now, I'm not going to go over each and every puzzle since it doesn't really feel the story at all, but let's go over the interesting bits. There is a moment while the Red Explorer is working his way through a maze, with the Dark Blue Explorer's help of course, that we can see writing on the wall saying to bring down the guiding light. Not to mention the crawling shadow people that litter the halls, like I'm in one of those Halloween haunted house experiences. We test our 700 ELO chess moves and progress on to our first largely relevant puzzle to the story. Now, the Red Explorer is controlling the cardboard characters that are needed to play out a scene on stage. The Dark Blue Explorer is on the stage and can hear through recordings what the scene is, and the 2 need to put the relevant characters and props on stage to progress. The scenes go in this order. There once was a castle filled with life, and there lived a king and his wife. All were happy and all was good, until the king killed all he could. Standing in blood, he proudly said, you don't actually get to hear what he said, as it's largely a jumbled mess. But I should mention that the entire time the scenes are playing, there is a guest watching from the audience. Now, this creature is an actual entity that is forcibly watching the explorers tell the story. And I might add, it is creepy as all hell doing so. Now, it's not revealed in this game what that character is, or quite frankly how relevant the stage scene actually is, since at this stage, I'm not even sure the developers knew themselves. But we do come to find out that the entity watching from the audience is called the Jester, hovering overhead, a shadowy puppet on strings. This is a character that we will get to know much more about, intimately actually, in the future titles. The story told via the stage talks about a real story involving some of the older inhabitants of the castle, also a story that we will find out more about in future titles. The 2 explorers can find a nearby hatch that will lead them both to a tunnel outside of the castle, but with a caveat. Only one can leave the castle while the other must stay behind. In the game, this is a choice of the two players, and either one of you can leave, but canonically, the red explorer is the one that escapes, while the dark blue explorer is left behind, to go back to his books, I guess. The red explorer is left to wonder if there was another way to get out together, and that ends the very brief story of We Were Here, the first title in the series. Now, it's important to remember that when this was released, I don't think they had much of a story in mind at all, but they do focus on that in the coming titles. But this game does set a premise of what's to come with the color-coded explorers and the king's story, along with the shadow jester that watched. I'll be releasing each of the We Were Here story explain videos every 2 days until we're all done. You guys can see the story unfold throughout the series. While short, I do hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please remember to like and subscribe for more content in the future. Until next time, peace.